Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three martinis coming up.
Hey, happy Friday. Glad you're with us for the Three Martini Lunch. All crazy martinis to close out the week, but there's certainly a fun element of good in the first one. I'd say in the second two, it's more frustrating than fun, but we'll get to all of it. And Jim, when you're thinking about the Biden pardons, I mean, this started Sunday. We're doing two more stories on it today because it just won't go away. The Republicans are furious. The Democrats are furious. And then in the middle, you've got major questions about the 2020 census and how it's apparently benefited Democrats, which is interesting since it was run during a Republican administration. But we'll get to all this. But the Biden pardons is just this thing that is not going to go away for him over the last few weeks of his presidency.
Greg, we've approached the holiday season. Our holiday awards are coming closer. And I think what I like best about our first martini is that it takes a moment to stop and think about the true victims of the Hunter Biden pardon, hurt more than anyone else. That, of course, being Joe Biden's library fundraisers. Think of them. Think of how hard they have it now, Greg. Remember the true victims.
Let's start with some good news here, and that is that last night, Mrs. Columbus served up Omaha steaks. It was a long day. It was a long commute. I don't know what was going on I-95. It took me 2 hours to get home from the office yesterday. I was not in a great mood, and Mrs. Columbus immediately turns to me and says, I waited to cook the steaks until you got home. So they're going to be as fresh as possible as soon as we hit the table here. So kudos to Mrs. Columbus for her thoughtfulness and then also her excellence in cooking up the steaks. But then she had fun with it. She cooked them up. We had sirloins and filet mignon. And then she cut off little chunks, put them on toothpicks, put them in separate dishes, and had the girls and me come in and say, which ones do you like better? I'm like, I love both of these. These are amazing. I ended up eating the filet mignon, of course, because why wouldn't you? One of my daughters said it's the best steak she's ever had, and I can't disagree. I mean, this is terrific stuff from Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com and save 50% off site-wide during the Christmas gift buying season. Promo code 3ML. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with the promo code 3ML. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, as Jim said, let's talk about the real victims of the Hunter Biden pardon. It's not the people he swindled out of money and all that stuff in his influence peddling days, but no, it's Democratic donors and fundraisers. Blake Morrow with the story over at Washington Free Beacon. Top Democratic donors furious with President Joe Biden for pardoning his son Hunter are threatening to withhold funding for his future presidential library. Quote, if they had their bleep together, they would have been doing the work on this over the summer right after he announced he was stepping aside, one top Democrat told Axios. Now it's just too late. Hopefully they are right-sizing their expectations and budget. Biden's sweeping pardon, which contradicted his earlier promise, added to growing frustration among powerful Democrats who blame his failure to exit the race sooner for the party's landslide election loss. A former Biden aide told the New York Post that Hunter's pardon, quote, will be a stain on his legacy. Quote, it's a shame that President Biden put his family and personal life above the country. So, Jim, somehow we've gone from really deserves to be on Mount Rushmore, as Nancy Pelosi tried to cover her tracks for shoving Biden out, to I think you're going to have to set your expectations somewhere around the James Buchanan, Andrew Johnson type size presidential library. Sorry, Joe.
Well, they said right size, so I believe they are now examining, you know, those prefabricated sheds you see out on display outside Home Depot? They have four walls, and you can go inside, and they'll have a bust of Biden, and, you know, that'll be it. You just go in and you say, oh, yes, he was president. Semi-seriously, I imagine the Joe Biden Presidential Library will not be a particularly spectacular one. There has been this trend towards bigger and more elaborate presidential libraries. By the way, I must point out, if you get a chance to go to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library out in Simi Valley, California, it is awesome. They have Air Force One there. You get to walk through it. I did that for a National Review Institute event a couple of years ago. And it's awesome. And they have the whole motorcade. You can get inside the beast. Like it's like an awesome museum of the presidency. Bill Clinton is down in Arkansas. I know it looks like a giant trailer, but apparently it's very impressive inside. You can go down and you can go into a replica of the Oval Office and have your picture taken. Now, I don't know about you, Greg. I would not allow couples into the Oval Office replica at the Bill Clinton Presidential Library, but that's just me.
Well, you don't want to send your wife in alone.
Okay, so honest to goodness, Mrs. Garrity did indeed go there. But there is no animatronic Bill Clinton to come out. How you doing? You're a cutie. I'm like, no. A bit more seriously, Joe Biden is first of all, I think you can make an argument that if he's not a failed president, he's exceptionally close to being a failed president. And his presidency is ending on one sour note after another, that if you are a Democratic donor, that some Biden aides come knocking on your door and saying, hey, we'd like you to donate to the, you're probably going to tell them to get lost. You don't want to open up your wallets for this. And there was another quote. This came from an Axios article, and it just seemed very revealing. This lament that some longtime Biden defenders just want his administration to end as soon as possible. Like, have you ever heard that about any, were any of the Obama folks saying, oh, I just can't wait for this thing to end or something? Like that is an expression of defeat you will rarely find. Not just because look, there have been one-term presidents before, but you rarely have one-term presidents who couldn't run for, I guess you could say, make the comparison to LBJ. Again, Bill Clinton's nickname is Spanish. We've been saying the whole time he was too old. He's now 82. But by the way, traditionally, let's say you didn't do much fundraising for your library while you were in office because you were busy, being president. Biden has been semi-retired for about 6 months now, or some would say for 4 years. How many more years does he have? Will he see the completion of his construction of his presidential library? So this is a very unusual set of circumstances. He was, at one point, they were saying, oh, he's got to be up on Mount Rushmore. Democrats loved him because he was the guy who beat Trump. And then he became the guy who could not beat Trump. And he picked a running mate who could not beat Trump and who turned into a major liability in the re-election. People were frustrated about the state of the economy for almost the entirety of his presidency. The Afghanistan debacle, the open borders, the world is on fire, Israel's under attack, Russia invades Ukraine. All kinds of stuff went bad on this presidency. What are you going to put in this thing? The Lilly Ledbetter Act? Right? Like, what, look at all the post offices he renamed. Remember, it was great years for Amtrak. I thought about how tough the job is for the fundraiser, but Greg, maybe we should be thinking about the real victims of this. The curators of the Joe Biden Presidential Library. What do you put in there as the success stories? Remember when everybody said, how are they going to talk about the Lewinsky scandal and the Bill Clinton one? And there's 2 lines, about how unfair the whole process was. Again, Bill Clinton, ultimate victim here. So, yeah, sure. When you're thinking about all the homeless, all the people out there who are struggling, all the people who are alone, think of the Biden staffers and how hard a holiday season they're having, everyone.
Well, maybe they have less money to work with. They won't have to come up with that many things that are positive because it's just
exit through the gift shop, everybody.
That's right. Get your own pardon. Fill it out on your way home. All right. Well, let's talk about something way better than the idea of a Biden presidential library. I'm sure there'll be knocking down the doors for everybody to come visit that one. But let's talk about artificial intelligence. Because even if you think it's a bit overhyped, AI is suddenly everywhere, from self-driving cars to molecular medicine to business efficiency. And if it's not in your industry yet, it is coming fast. But AI needs a lot of speed and computing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? The answer is to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI.
OCI is blazing fast and secure for all of your infrastructure, database, and application development needs, plus all your AI and machine learning workloads. OCI costs about half that of regular computing and 80% less for networking, so you're saving a pile of money. Thousands of businesses have already upgraded to OCI, including MGM Resorts, Specialized Bikes, and Fireworks AI.
Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. For U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment, offer ends 12/31/24. So see if your company qualifies for this special offer at oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our next bad martini. I guess it's crazy martini now, but this one's definitely got a bad aftertaste to it. And Katie Pavlich over at Town Hall with the hat tip here. So she says, during a House Oversight committee hearing about the U.S. Census Thursday, Chairman James Comer revealed population is being overcounted in areas that benefit Democrats, ultimately skewing representation in Congress. Quote, in 2020, the post-enumeration survey suggests there were overcounts in New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Hawaii, Delaware, Minnesota, Utah, and Ohio. And there were undercounts in Texas, Florida, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Illinois. 6 of the 8 states benefiting from overcounts tend to favor Democrats in awarding congressional apportionment and electoral college votes. Meanwhile, 5 of the 6 states that were unfairly penalized by undercounts tended to vote for Republicans. These miscounts had an impact on representation. Small numbers of proportional differences in population between states can impact the apportionment calculation. In the 2020 apportionment, a difference of only 89 people was the tipping point for New York being apportioned 26 seats instead of 27, for example. Furthermore, illegal aliens are counted as part of the census. And of course, a lot of people on the left fought to keep a question about citizenship off the 2020 survey. So the government doesn't really know, which is the way the left often wants it. And so that gets factored into apportionment. A lot of these folks live in, deep blue areas, which means the deep blue areas potentially get more districts. And so, Jim, the 2020 census was conducted by the Trump administration. So other than getting forced to remove the citizenship question, they were the ones in charge of this. So it's a little bit frustrating that this wasn't done more carefully. It was during COVID, so that made it more complicated to some extent as well. Probably not as much door-to-door activity by the census workers and so forth. But in the end, the Democrats have a hand up. And as you look at the current House of Representatives and the incoming House of Representatives, a couple seats here and there can make a huge difference.
Oh, definitely. And, you start thinking about how does this current balance look if there's an extra seat in a states like Texas, Florida, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, Illinois. Okay, yeah, Harris won that one. What happens if there's one fewer electoral vote in a states like New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Hawaii, Delaware, Minnesota, Utah, and Ohio? You look at that, you're like, okay, that's probably about 6, and it's not going to be earth-shattering. But remember all the controversy about Nevada? Who's going to win Nevada? What does John Ralston think? Do they matter?
Yeah.
Psst, turned out they didn't. Sorry, John. But 6 electoral votes is a big deal. And for the Census Bureau to say, oh, that one job we have, which is counting, we didn't count well. We missed a few. We overestimated a few. We don't have that. I believe last time, I want to say the 2010 census, Utah had been exceptionally close to getting another congressional seat. You're always going to have to draw the line somewhere. This is, by the way, one of the arguments people have argued. We need a larger House of Representatives, and the idea that right now each member of the House represents in the ballpark of about 500,000 people. You're never going to have a precise equality in each one, but you want to have a certain, within a certain range. Maybe that would alleviate this problem a bit. But in the end, this again, the fact that this was done during Trump, the fact that there were 2 red states on the overcount list and 2 blue states on the undercount list does indicate this is not an evil conspiracy, just the way the math worked out. But boy, if you're a Democrat, it sure is lucky for you that the math worked out that you end up with 6 additional congressional seats in states that are generally friendly to you. And Kamala Harris got 6 electoral votes that she probably would not have gotten if the entire count had been inaccurate. Secondly, by the way, so they were able to look back and look at the numbers a second time. Greg, they count. Right? This is the job. This is what they do. What? I'm feeling a little bit like the guys in Office Space. What is it you say you do here? Because once the Census Bureau is like, hey, we messed up on counting the population. That's what you do. You're the census. That's your job.
I can understand undercounting because people don't turn stuff in. Mm-hmm. How do you overcount? I don't get that one. But
multiple personalities. They count twice.
Well, no wonder California's got such a high population. But sorry, California. I'm just kidding, mostly.
We love our listeners out there. It's the home state of Die Hard.
If you go back to 2020, and even if you accept the probably bogus number of 11 million illegal aliens, if half of them actually fill this out and they don't have to mark that they're not citizens and so forth, and you do factor those into reapportionment, you're getting to pretty large numbers of seats. And then if you don't deport the ones that came in during Biden and they're still around in 2030, and you're probably going to get a few more over time, you're really having a lot of seats impacted by all this. So you got to get a handle on that. And hopefully they will over the next 4 years. Because
the good news, they really have 5 years to fix this, Greg. And that's kind of their 5-year deadline I don't like to use the term 5-year plan, obviously, because of the connotation that has in terms of communism, but a 5-year plan or a 5-year blueprint to fix both the U.S. Census and the New York Jets. I'm hoping to have a playoff berth by the year 2030.
Which one are you more confident about?
Just a long, painful silence. The lack of an answer gives you the answer.
It all depends who your owner is, I think. But
any franchise can have a bad 2 decades. It happens. Cubs fans,
Tell me about it.
Any team can have a bad century.
Tell me about it. Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, if that doesn't make you want to drink as a Jets fan, or, hey, the Bears haven't done much better over the last couple decades. Well, they did get to a Super Bowl, but it's been almost 20 years now. Z-Biotics is going to be one of your good friends as you watch some of these games. And if you're going to drink, definitely drink responsibly so you wouldn't, have a rough next morning anyway. But if you take Z-Biotics first, you're definitely going to do better the next morning than you would have otherwise.
Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. Scientists invented it to tackle your rough mornings after drinking. Now here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next morning. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol produces an enzyme that breaks this byproduct down. So just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, as I'm sure you always do, and you will feel your best the following morning.
Go to zbiotics.com/3ml to get 15% off your first order when you use 3ml at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantees, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Visit zbiotics.com/3ml and use the code 3ml at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times. All right, Jim, on to our last crazy martini and back to Joe Biden and pardons. This one, though, has nothing to do with Hunter Biden. But apparently that broke the seal on people wondering what other pardons might be coming down the pike, because there's going to be more. Every president does it on their way out the door. It's because it's usually not very popular. And so they don't want to have to deal with a lot of questions about it while they're still in office, because once noon rolls around on January 20th, they're a private citizen and they can tell the press to go pound sand. But there are many people around Joe Biden who want him to issue a bunch of preemptive pardons because they're worried about what might happen to some people once the new Trump administration comes in, and particularly what happens if Kash Patel, for example, is the FBI director, and on it goes. 3 names keep bubbling up to the surface, but I know there's a longer list than that among some folks on the left. Anthony Fauci, they're worried about him getting prosecuted. Liz Cheney, as a result of her activities on the January 6th committee, and including potentially contacting witnesses outside of legal counsel. And then also Adam Schiff. So, because of the way he flat out lied to the American people and ran the Russia investigation, as Trump would say it early on in the first Trump term. So this seems to be making a bad situation worse with Joe Biden pardons. As we said with the Hunter Biden pardon, usually you're pardoned or commuted for specific things you've been convicted for.
Yeah.
There's not usually a ton of, hey, anything that might have happened during this time, they're not eligible for prosecution anymore. We saw that with Ford and Nixon. Hunter Biden got that to some extent for more than 10 years. And now a bunch of folks in Biden's circle think it's important to throw out a ton of these things potentially in the last month of this presidency.
Greg, I like my Constitution, or I should say our Constitution, the way it is. But if you wanted to persuade me to say that a pardon must be for a specific crime, instead of a blanket pardon for anything a person may have done, that I find a little more plausible. I find that strikes me as a responsible and reasonable limit on the president's pardon power, which at this point is absolute. And as we're seeing, you had limitations that were based on norms. And I don't mean from Cheers or Coleman. I just mean tradition and the established, pattern of how it had been used before. But now, so for my first observation of this was think about all the times Joe Biden has stood before us and told us no man is above the law. Right. Well, obviously, Hunter Biden kind of, under the broad-based, this covers anything he has done or may have done, any potential crimes, anything he could possibly be indicted for a 10-year period. That does not, doesn't lie. But then I went back and I checked when he named Merrick Garland to be Attorney General. Biden kept going on, we are a nation of laws, not men, right? And the idea there is that the law applies to everybody. You don't get a special dispensation based on who you are, on your title, or, we don't have aristocrats. We don't have different social classes. The same law applies to everybody. That's why the statue of justice is blind, right? I can see the concern, and my colleague Andy McCarthy has made the point that for a lot of these indictments, particularly what we saw amongst a bunch of the Trump officials, the process is the punishment. That certain prosecutors don't actually care if a jury comes back and says, we will not convict this person. We don't believe the government has proven its case. Because in the interim, you've had your name dragged through the mud. You've had to pay for ideally the best lawyer you can find. The process is a mental stress, social stress, loss of reputation, great financial cost. Like the whole point is like, congratulations, you won, but now your life has been ruined by being named as this. And I think that's what they're fearing here. If Biden's going to do this, he then has to say, I pardon, and I'm going to say Schiff, Fauci, and Cheney for any and all crimes committed from this date to that date whatsoever. Let's say we find out that Fauci and Adam Schiff are notorious bank robbers, and they raided the Federal Reserve and stole a bunch of gold. We would not be able to do it because they have let's say, hey, remember what Fauci said? They absolutely positively were not doing gain of function research anywhere? And
I do.
And it would look kind of like they did, and gave this Clintonian, it depends on what the definition of is. Well, he can't be, contempt of Congress, hey, he's pardoned. Adam Schiff, let's say, hypothetically has a nanny who's not in the country illegally or didn't pay all his taxes. Hey, I've got a pardon from Biden that covers everything. This proposal of preemptive pardons is the most shameful abuse of the pardon power since President Edward Bennett gave CIA Deputy Director Robert Ritter an autographed get-out-of-jail-free card for Operation Reciprocity. Okay, technically that was only in the movie Clear and Present Danger, but that was, the president's doing something, kind of abusing this power of preemptively giving people something where, even if they've committed terrible crimes, they can get it, they have this pardon in hand. This is what Biden's talking about doing. And he talked about how he was restoring the rule of law, and he was I give you my word as a Biden, and all that stuff. No wonder he's ending it in disgrace.
It's the old Potomac two-step.
Yeah, very good, yeah.
But
let me get some jelly beans.
It's kind of amazing because the Biden administration, a lot of criticism from the right, and I think a lot of it's warranted, that they use the justice system in a very political way over the last 4 years. And now, oh my goodness, the other side, we can't trust the other side to act honorably in this. Oh my gosh, what a bait and switch.
So I did a Washington Post live event for one of my other employers, and Jonathan Capehart said, well, Jim, they're just thinking about it. Okay. But that's why I'm denouncing it now. It's because I don't want him to go ahead with this. And the second thing is the entire argument, every time Biden had said, I will not pardon my son, it was effectively a vote of confidence in the Department of Justice, of saying that I trust the justice system, I trust juries, I trust the judge, I trust everyone involved in this to be impartial, to be fair, to give my son his day in court, and to give him every reasonable opportunity to prove his innocence and to not get convicted of a crime. But Hunter Biden pled guilty for a bunch of these. So he says, trust the justice system, trust the justice system. The election passes, then Biden says, hey, I can't trust the justice system. The whole thing's biased. He validates the criticism of everybody he was trying to refute over the last 2 years. Start the weekend, Greg.
Yeah, exactly. Here's another reason why you don't need to do this, President Biden. If there ever were charges against Fauci or Schiff or Liz Cheney, the jurisdiction would be Washington, D.C. Or Montgomery County, Maryland for NIH, or Southern California. You're not going to get a jury to convict these people, most likely, even if they did deserve to be prosecuted, which in some cases, who knows what the evidence would show. But
California, they haven't convicted anybody since Manson.
That's right. Especially if you're famous. If you're famous in Southern California, don't even bother. Anyway, Jim, have a great weekend. See you Monday.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. We'd love to have them listening. We also are really grateful for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. They do make a difference. So especially if you like us, give us a 5-star rating and kind reviews. They really do help. Also, on your home devices, you can get us just by saying play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific weekend and join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.